Hello and welcome. I'm Phil Liggett, joined as ever by Paul Sherwen in commentary. A first chance for World Cycling Productions to bring you the Amstel Gold race, which is in fact Holland's only international one-day classic race and the last of the spring classics which count in the World Cup. We're looking here at the lead group, which escaped after only 70 of the 253 kilometres today. And we've got Alexander Vinokurov on the far side. In the mauve and the blue is Ludo Dirksens, and the other rider is Koos Moerenhout of the Rabobank team. Three riders setting the pace, and the gap has been up as high as 7 minutes since they broke clear, but there is now reaction from the field.
And this is the main field, led here by Udo Bolts, one of the real stalwarts of the Telecom team on the left-hand side there in the pink and white jersey. Moving up alongside him, Joe Planckaert, and obviously a lot of Rabobank riders to the front of this group. Right in the middle there is Martin den Bakker, and the champion of Holland on his right shoulder there in the red, white and blue is in fact Michael Bogaard. But this is a brave move, Phil, by these three guys. But the difficult thing about the Amstel Gold Race is the repetitive nature of all of these climbs towards the end. In fact, there are 27 climbs in the race route, and they're not steep. They're not very long, I should say, but very steep. And what happens is the main field, it gets whittled down from behind.
Three of those climbs, by the way, nip into Belgium, we're down in the southeast corner of Holland here. It's known as Little Switzerland. The race is based on Maastricht, which is on the River Maas, but if you're in Belgium, it's called the River Meuse. And these riders now living in the hilly part of Belgium, of Holland and Belgium, and you can see by the crowd here, this is their territory. They are hoping for a Dutch win. They haven't had one since 1991 when Frans Maassen won. An attack now by Joe Planckaert, being trailed by the Dutch champion here, Michael Bogaard, talked about as a real favourite after his great ride last week in the Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
And let's not forget a great win in the early season Paris-Nice race, which was totally dominated by the Rabobank team. I'm quite surprised to see an attack coming from Joe Planckaert. He didn't ride Liège-Bastogne-Liège last week, but he had a very good early start to the World Cup races. The chaos at the top of the climb here, because all the photographers have been caught out by these two riders. And that's one reason why in these races in Holland, a lot of riders wait until the summit of the climb to attack, because the motorbike riders hold back a bit, and then they can force them, and then there's nowhere to accelerate, and you get sucked along by the acceleration.
Drafting in a legal way, I guess you could call it there, but now this is back with the leaders here. And Koos Moerenhout still looking pretty cool, but the gap is closing down. Rabobank playing their first card here. Moerenhout is on form, and Vinokurov, now his second year pro, had a great year last year, and this year consolidating just as well. There's the big field. As some riders already, I think, are out of luck here, Paul. The winds of Holland don't really affect this race as they would in the other parts of the country. But down here, it's the hills they worry about. 4 minutes 36, it was up to 7, and so they're slowly getting back on terms. And with this race, all the stings really are in the tail of the course.
It's a strange move by Bogaard going across there with Joe Planckaert, because that gap is so big. They do risk the chance of being caught in no man's land between the three leaders at the front here and the main peloton. And I would think for Bogaard that could cost him an awful lot of energy towards the end. But he does have the advantage of knowing that he's got a teammate in the front and a very good strong team behind who will be able to take over if he does get pulled back.
Well, Dirksens, and let's look at the dust here now. This is at the rear of the group here as the rider's trying to get back up to the peloton. It's the Moto 3, which is the third camera. We're going to go back up to the sharp end of that peloton because this is Joe Planckaert here now. And Massilia has come up. Massilia has come up there, Paul.
Well, that was a good move by him, because it looked as if these two riders were moving very clear, and what happened was Massilia jumped across to the gap there, making a three-man chase group, and they've actually brought down the advantage there, or disadvantage, to 3 minutes 42 seconds. And Michael Bogaard here looking very cool and collected, realizing that now that he's got two very good workers alongside him, they may have a chance of closing down on the leaders, who actually broke away from the main field after 70 kilometers.
So Joe Planckaert being joined now by the Dutch champion. He's gone early. You know, they were talking before the race started. It would be in this region where they expected to see Bogaard go for it. And it looks like he's now having to ride that long breakaway at the same time. But he could do with a few more riders around him, I think, than just these three. Because the big names, Frank van den Broek, Bartoli, still back in that main pack.
The three riders working very well together. The car you can see just behind there, in fact, is the race director's car. Normally he would travel behind the main peloton, but he's obviously come up here to get a look at the Dutch champion and then go a little bit further forward so that in fact he could check out the performance of the riders here. The race director nowadays of the Amstel Gold Race, in fact, is Leo van Vliet, a former professional rider on the big TI rally squad.
And a former winner, leader rather, in the Tour de France. He's had the yellow jersey in that race as well. Terrific enthusiasm by the Dutch, and they do support this race. It always has been the case since it was first won by Jean Stablinski, the Frenchman, the former world champion, back in 1966. This is not really the race for the French, though. Although Eno has won it, they've had 2 wins. It's really the Dutch who have dominated it, but they've been a little bit thin on the ground since '91. And Frans Maassen, now retired, is the last man to have won this event for the Dutchies.
It is rather strange that the French don't perform so well on this territory, because this is the kind of terrain that would normally suit the French style of rider. Short, explosive climbs. They ride well in a race like Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but for some reason they don't really seem to excel when it comes to riding this race here in Holland. The difficulty, I think, is not the fact that there are so many climbs, but the race zigzags all over the place and they feel completely disorientated. They've no idea exactly where they are on the course, which is a big advantage for the Dutch riders.
A glimpse of the immaculately clean towns and villages here in Holland. They're almost spring cleaned and pristine, as they're now the roads completely closed. Strange enough, where Holland is a very popular sport, the roads are rarely fully closed for cycle racing. This is one of the few exceptions, the Amstel Gold Race, which is their only big classic race. And 3 riders on a small climb again. Spring a little bit late down this end of the woods. The leaves still waiting to burst. The Fromberg, a 7% climb now, this one. A tough one. This is climb number 20 of 27. The last 3, by the way, are in Belgium.
Next climb these riders will face is the Kuttenberg, a very difficult climb with portions of it 21%. Ludo Dirksen is a very lucky man to get onto a top squad like the Lampre team here, because before he was just regarded basically as a kermes rider, the riders of races which just take part in Belgium on small circuits, while Theo de Roy here, the team manager from Rabobank, comes up alongside Michael Bogert to give him some information and advice on just how the race is developing behind.
Well, the Kuttenberg is where they were saying Bogart would launch an attack. He's gone earlier than that, and I think what he's trying to assess is from Theo is what the race situation is behind. Well, we can see ourselves because this is Paolo Bettini coming through, and the Mappe boys are now bringing Michele Bartoli back into the action. The white jersey of the new World Cup leader, Frank Vandenbroek, is just off our picture to the right. So the big guns also now valuing the steep climb of the Kuttenberg, where this race could totally change.
Up there as well for Mappe is Wilfred Peters, the big team domestique rider who just a couple of weeks ago finished right up there in Paris-Roubaix with an incredible 2nd place after finishing 3rd the year before. The riders at the head of the race now are on the slopes of the Kuttenberg, which has a maximum of 22%. It's a very difficult climb, and there aren't as many people here as would normally come out to watch this, because this is one of the high spots of the Amstel Gold Race. And you can see, of course, Murenhout now really a fairly laboured style on this climb, which is very difficult.
Big rising there for Marcus Zeberg. He's a Swiss rider, but he's riding now on the Rabobank team, and he's got good form as well. The crowd at the top, I think, Paul, largely because, as you can see, they put fences up, and you can't certainly get cars down here, so you'd have to walk a fair way down the hill to see the action. And that most of the spectators in the Amstel Gold stay near the top of the climbs, because then they run for the cars and they choose another viewpoint elsewhere, and you can do that at this event on a number of venues. Anyway, they're clapping them all the way, even so, and they're seeing 1 Dutchman in the group at the moment, Koos Murenhout, and the Belgian rider here, Dirksens, and the Kazakhstan rider at the back. And little Vinokurov, by the way, is a teammate of Andrei Kivalev when they were amateurs. Now a counter-attack, 3:19. These are the chasers, Plankert, Bogart and Nassalia. Little Nassalia, he's only won a couple of races in his life. One was the Tour of Langkawi overall, another one was a stage in the Giro d'Italia, so he chooses his wins well.
Big chase here, but the chase is not making a major impression on the 3 leaders. 3:19 was the last official time gap that we had, but that will certainly change once these riders get to the Kuttenberg, because they will be a lot fresher than the 3 leaders. In fact, Vinokurov, the Kazakhstan rider, had a very good start to the season with a win in the overall standings at the Tour de Valencia, but then he went on to Paris-Nice where he broke his collarbone, so really now he is on his way back to try and find some kind of form for the races later on in the season.
Now the race will eventually pass through the start-finishing line in Maastricht, and then they go out on a big loop before they come back for the real finish. So these 3 will get a fair idea whether they're going to pick those 3 leaders up by the time they get down to Maastricht. Still a way off yet, and they've still got the Coburg to come, which is the big climb that out of Valkenburg, which is the holiday area in this area of Holland. And it really is nice around here. Perfect cycling country. You can see what the lanes are like. They're almost very British, in fact. No cycle paths in this section. Riders just ride the roads like anybody else. And there's not many vehicles down here on these back streets either.
Little chat there from Bogard coming up alongside Misaglia, probably letting him know what information has been passed on to him by his team manager to encourage him to keep working in this group, to let him know that it is successful. They are riding away from the main field, but in fact information coming from race radio that the main field is not too far behind, around about 35 seconds behind these riders as they reach the steepest part of the Kuttenberg.
Right, these boys are on it now. They're still trying to close down the gap. The service car has gone forward there. Now it's either been sent forward to the leaders, or it's a sure sign that these 3 are not 30 seconds now ahead of the main chase pack. Remember, we've seen the Mappe Quick-Step boys reassuring their leader they can chase these 3 down. Now let's see if they can. The old legs must be aching a bit here, all in bottom gear on this climb.
It's remarkable to see Joe Plankart ride so well on these roads here in the Amstel Gold Race in the Limburg area of southern Holland, because Joe Plankart I've always regarded as the kind of rider good for the races in Belgium where there's not so many climbs, and you can see why the team cars were sent forward there, because there is a big attack by the Mappe squad. Again, Paolo Bettini doing the work for Michele Bartoli, and they're on the same slopes of the same climb of the Kuttenberg as the 3 men we're looking at right now.
They will actually see these 3 riders now, Paul, as they're coming up the climb here. They're closing down desperately quickly. Martin Den Bakker, Zeberger in this group as well. Could be a big change. Michele Bartoli, Frank van der Broek in the white jersey of the World Cup leader. And they are now going to put all of the top names, and Lance Armstrong wasn't far away from the nose of that either.
Well, a quick glance of Lance Armstrong at the front of the main field there, the first time we've seen him so far. In the black jersey there of US Postal Service, Armstrong riding his first World Cup of the season. A little bit of a problem with injury, although he did have an excellent start to the season with a stage victory at the Circuit of the South in a time trial. So the form is obviously there or thereabouts, but he has had a difficult time getting up to form after a couple of injuries.
Well, it's good to see him at this stage of the race so near the front, because that means he's still riding with some intent. And of course the other riders in this race will not know how his form is, because they haven't seen him in any of the other classics this year. Now they're coming together, at least the 3 chasers and what is looking like a very select part of the peloton.
Well, that's obviously split. There was a big group at the bottom of the Kuttenberg, and moving to the front there, in fact, is Lance Armstrong. And there's going to be some chaos in a moment there, because on these roads, it's very difficult to get past even a small group of 2 or 3 riders. And there were a couple of cars behind and a whole load of motorbikes. And this could be a changing point in the race, because in that group, we've got Michele Bartoli, we've got Lance Armstrong, we've got Frank van den Broek, some of the big favourites for the race. And if they put the hammer down over the top, then this could be the formation of a very big break. But at the moment, we still have the 3 leaders, chased by these 3 guys we're looking at now, and a small group of 12 riders starting to take up the chase.
Joe Plankart there assessing whether it's worth continuing this pursuit at the moment until the reinforcements arrive. And I think he's probably decided it's better to hang on, and let's see who's come up, who's made the big effort here. The wind, as you can see, blowing from the right.
And a flag of Texas there, obviously a Lance Armstrong supporter. Interesting to note that Joe Plankart has got into this move, which has got caught between the leading group of 3 and the chase group. But he is a very good tactician, comes from a long family of cyclists. His 2 uncles and his father were all great cyclists. Uncle Eddie and Walter themselves winners of World Cup races, and his dad Willie, in fact, finished 2nd in the World Championships to Eddie Merckx back in 1964.
A great Belgian cycling dynasty indeed. And they still support Joe, by the way, who is a very consistent front runner in all of the classics. One day he might get the break he needs and lands the big one. He's had a 2nd in Paris-Roubaix. This type of race might suit him. Certainly a lot of riders feel now they're in with a chance here, because it's showdown time for them all as they head towards Maastricht first time through. Those 3 leaders, Paul, are putting up a good show of resistance here. It's still 3:15.
They're really hovering, and I'm surprised, because the 3 chasers have really got the hammer down. They're obviously now looking at the race situation, and they know there's a group of very strong riders coming up to them. So they've actually probably turned off the power, and they're going to wait for that group. In fact, there is the group now. So this is going to make a 15-man chase group behind the 3 leaders, and then I think we'll see some drastic changes in that time advantage.
So here we are back with the three leaders now. Vinokurov, by the way, sitting at the back, recovering from a broken collarbone in Paris-Nice this year. But he's only been a pro for 2 years and he's had 10 wins. And that's a pretty daunting prospect for him. He should have a terrific career.
Frank Vandenbroek leading the World Cup, followed by Michele Bartoli, Martin Den Bakker in this group as well. A very strong chase group starting to form now, so the race is very likely to take a different face at the front here, because Lance Armstrong also in this group.
Zeberg at the back.
It's amazing to see Zeberg, because he came into this team really as a sprinter, but he's turning out to be a very good one-day race rider as well. He won a couple of stages in the Tour of Spain last year, and we could get a chance here to see the formation of the group. Another rider from Lotto getting onto the back. In fact, Joe Plancard, or they must have picked up Plancard.
Yes, he's brought them back. That's Gianmatteo Fagnini in the red Seiko jersey. It's odd to see an Italian Seiko rider in a league group at this stage, because it's a team built around Cipollini, of course. He doesn't ride this event, but certainly Fagnini here, who's the lead-out man normally for Big Mario, has got himself in a very select group of front-runners at the moment.
Well, maybe Fagnini's been given a bit of liberty to ride his own race today, because just this week in the local press, Mario Cipollini said, "I'm not coming to Belgium anymore because I'm fed up taking a battering on the cobbles and in the cold weather. I'm going to stick to being a bunch sprinter."
Well, this is Holland, but he does go into Belgium, so I guess he's got a point. Well, Lance Armstrong looking very strong and takes the line through here now, and this group working well together. They are beginning to fly now. Dusty roads, a long dry period down here in the southeast of Holland, as these riders now are trying to get in touch with those three leaders, and then they can concentrate, of course, on breaking clear. But they've got themselves a nice select little group here, 66 kilometres to go, so it's not that far, but it's not long now before we get through towards the finish at Maastricht either. That's the first time, by the way.
Michele Bartoli is going to be very happy to have his teammate up here, Paolo Bettini, a very strong rider, a man who's capable of winning a race like this in his own right, but he's decided today to dedicate himself to the victory of Michele Bartoli, who just a couple of weeks ago made an incredible performance to win the Flèche Wallonne in atrocious conditions, and then I think paid for that really when he went to Liège-Bastogne-Liège, because he wasn't in really at the kill there, a little bit under par, but obviously that Flèche Wallonne in the snow and the wind had left certain traces on his body, and he hadn't recovered properly. But today he's looking very confident. He's dropped to the back of the group here, leaving his teammates to do some work up there, and obviously turning around to get a look over his shoulder and just see how the race is developing from behind.
He's also got Nardello in this group as well, so that's another strong man with him. Iser, and now 64 kilometres to go, and the three leaders. I've not seen Vinokurov doing a lot of work up here. He could still be finding that his form is a bit low after that crash in Paris-Nice, but Dirksens is having no problem keeping the pace going, and neither is Koos Moerenhout. Moerenhout's one of the developing riders coming through the Rabobank system, because they start with youth teams, they go through to elite amateur riders, and then if they continue progress, of course, they pass on into the first division Rabobank team. It's a system which is working very, very well indeed, and Moerenhout is one of the latest for the system. Good for him.
Well, this group of 15 chasers now certainly are picking up the pace. That gap has come down to 2 minutes and 15 seconds, so they are now starting to eat into the advantage of the three leaders. Michael Bogard will be happy that he's been caught by this group. There are 2 or 3 Rabobank riders in the group as well, so he has got reinforcements to help him. But once again, when we come to the crucial stages of these events, Frank Vandenbroek from the Cofidis squad appears to be isolated. Nobody there to help him. He's all on his own, so he daren't have any kind of mechanical mishap.
Well, they've probably paid him so much money they can't afford to buy him any super domestiques. I mean, that used to happen in the days of Sean Kelly, who never found himself on a super team because the little men weren't within a sniff of Sean, so he didn't win as many races perhaps as he should have done. But anyway, back up to the three leaders. This is looks like we're into towards Valkenburg area here now, as the three riders are coming strong. They'll climb the Kouwborg, which has been made famous over the years for the World Championships disputed on it. And Jan Ross won his world title here back in the late 70s. And, you know, they often refer to this race as the Amstel Gold Race, because Jan won it 5 times. And he's now the manager, or the general manager, I think they call him now, of the Rabobank squad. So he'll be right there supporting them. And it's a race he's very, very popular. This is the Kouwborg.
In fact, the Amstel Gold race, I reckon Jan Raas could have won it one more time, but I heard a rumour that in fact the organisation told him not to win the race one year because in fact it was making it look like a stupid race. Yeah. It was making it look as if it was organised for Jan Raas to win because he was so dominant. And Raas went to the front of one stage of this event, and in fact he pulled off with 200 metres to go, and that year it was Bernard Hinault who took the victory.
Well, I've got a soft spot for the Amstel Gold race, Paul, because when I got married back in the 70s, they sent me a telegram to wish me well. That was the only race organisation that did that, so it's nice to see this race. I've got a nice feel about the Amstel Gold race. It's watched by thousands and thousands of people, and they really do enjoy this race here in Holland.
It is a great race with a great atmosphere, and if you do get the chance to go over there and you get out a very good map, you can see this race 8 or 9 times out on the course. This is back with the chasing group of 15, and sitting right on the back there is Laurent Jalabert, number 173, riding for Oncé in the red, white and blue as the champion of France. Jalabert as well is the kind of rider who could perform well in a race like this.
Sort of an estranged Frenchman this year, after all the things he says about the doping and the anti-doping controls being made in France. He races on a Spanish team. He's not racing in France at the moment, and well, if he doesn't do the French medical tests, he won't be allowed to ride in the national championships either, which means he won't be able to defend the title.
Another man who may well not be able to ride the French titles. He's not riding this race today, but it's also Richard Virenque. These two riders, in fact, don't live in France anymore, and Jalabert himself has moved across to live in Switzerland.
Now, Leon van Bon setting the pace and being tailed by Frank Vandenbroek, who's looking very frisky right now. These three riders, their gap is being closed up on, but whether they'll catch them before they get at least to Maastricht first time, that remains to be seen. But it looks as though we've got about 14, 15 guys now in that chase group, which is trying to establish them. And I would say the gap now inside 2 minutes.
And you're right, Vinokurov, the Kazakhstan rider from Casino, for the last 15 or 20 kilometers has hardly ever come to the front. No. And he is the kind of rider normally who would work. The gap is coming down rapidly now, 1 minute 35 seconds. And I can only feel that the reason Vinokurov is not riding in that group is he's starting to feel the sequels of that crash that he had in Paris-Nice, where he broke his collarbone. And he is a rider who is on the way back to the top of the sport. So I think the distance here may be just getting to him.
Well, this little select group, I think it's 14 riders, are clear, and big names have missed out, Paul. Names like Van Petegem are not here. André Schmil isn't here. Ballerini isn't here. And, of course, Dextons would have loved to have seen him in this group here coming up, because that's why he's in the breakaway. Eric Zabel isn't here. And the man that did so well in Paris-Roubaix, Taffy. They've all missed this breakaway.
But there's some good names in there as well. People like Michele Bartoli, Lance Armstrong riding very well. It's so difficult to ride a recipe of smaller races like the Circuit of the South, and then all of a sudden you can see him riding right at the front here in the Amstel Gold race.
Now on to the next little climb after the Coburg, and it looks now as though these three riders know it's almost over, the Gulhemmerberg. That's a very Dutch name, isn't it? As these riders now not looking at all sharp at this point. Dirksen just keeping it going. Vinokurov simply is not taking part in the breakaway now. I'm not sure, but it could be down the back of those cars that we could... I don't think so, but I was going to say I thought we could see the field coming through, but perhaps not.
This is a very tortuous route here in the Amstel Gold race, because they've just come up the Kauberg and you think, oh, no problem, I can descend all the way down into Maastricht. Then all of a sudden the race turns to the right, drops down into the valley and climbs back up to the summit of the same climb that they were at before. So that there aren't that many hills in this area, but they certainly make advantage of using them as often as possible.
That's absolutely true. Well, they're great to come down with your touring bicycle when the sun's shining. It's not the nicest place to come in the driving rain, I can tell you. There's Bartoli, Joe Plankert, Fanini. This is the tail of the string at the moment. And also there, Bettini sitting off to the right. But I think they feel as though they've got themselves a nice little organised group going here. One or two not working flat out. They're waiting to see what happens. The bunch behind has been reduced to around 40 riders. We haven't seen anything of them for a while because our Komodo cameras are now getting a little bit split up. But Taffy is definitely in that chase group, and so too is Johan Museu and Peter Van Petegem.
It's a bit strange to see Vandenbroek doing so much work on the front of these climbs. He's all on his own. He should really be conserving a bit of energy for later on when the attacks are going to start to come thick and fast, and leave it to some of the other teams like Mapei, who are well represented in this group, and the Rabobank squad as well. They were there just a few moments ago on the same climb as the three leaders, so I reckon, Phil, once they get down towards Maastricht, they're going to see the big long straights, and they will in fact be pulling back those leaders.
Well, there are 14 riders there, Paul. A quick count from the helicopter, although they look as though they're split at the moment. And Mapei now trying to get this race on terms. I'm always, as you say, I'm always surprised at Vandenbroek. He's never afraid to do work, even though he's isolated, nobody to help him on his team. You'd think he would ride with a little bit more intelligence and let other riders who've got teammates here do the damage first. Less than a minute now. Remember, it was 7 minutes. This is going according to professional bike racing, if you like. They are timing the trap to perfection, and then we'll see the real winners try to get out of this group. That's the way I would expect.
Gap appearing there in the group of 14 chasers. Now that indicates one or two riders getting tired.
Yeah.
They're not following the wheel. They're trying to miss out one or two turns, and you can see Lance Armstrong very attentive. He was the next man who should have dropped to the back of the group, but seeing the split, he accelerates to close it down. He doesn't want to get caught out by one of these silly splits, because obviously now these riders starting to tire. As we come through there, it's 2 kilometers to the feeding station, and the feeding station is in the streets of Maastricht before the riders then head out on another loop.
I should imagine Lance was pretty unhappy by that guy that left the door open there, because that called for a big effort to close it down. So as Paul says, 2 kilometers now to the feed, and we're in Maastricht. This is the town where they signed the big European treaty a few years ago that brought all of the European community together as one. It's a really nice town. It lives on the side of the River Maas, and has become the start-finish point of the Amstel Gold race now. It didn't used to be that way. We used to start elsewhere and race into Maastricht, but it seems to have found itself a nice home. It used to also start up in a different part of Holland, at Eindhoven, where the brewers lived that sponsored it. But now we've settled down here, it seems, for the moment at least.
This group of 14 riders very organised now. The teams who are well represented coming to the front, doing their turns. That's obviously why Vandenbroek was at the front there, trying to encourage them on the climb, trying to pull back that leading group of 3 riders. And I have to say, for a group of 3 men who escaped after 70 kilometres of racing, they've stayed at the front of affairs for a long time. Armstrong gritting his teeth there. Looks like he's suffering a bit. Let's not forget, this is one of the biggest, longest races that Lance Armstrong has actually ridden this season. And at the back, a quick tap on the back from Paolo Bettini to Michele Bartoli. Don't worry, sunshine, we've got them all covered.
I tell you what, did you see Laurent Jalabert go through then? He sat there like he was on a touring bike, and he was just out for a ride with the guys sitting at the back. No expression on his face. His position so relaxed you wouldn't believe it. And you compare that with the likes of Armstrong, who looked to be under a little bit of pressure just then.
I have to say, whenever I look at Laurent Jalabert riding a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège last week, or like this Amstel Gold race, he always reminds me of the great Sean Kelly. The same kind of position and the same kind of temperament. Jalabert likes to ride, be present and competitive from the very start of the season right through until the end. And in this modern era of cycling, that's not very often the case, because riders like to try and prepare for specific objectives. But with a man like Jalabert, he wants to be omnipresent throughout the year.
Here come the 3 leaders, and they're coming through what will be the sprint finish in a while's time now, because they're going through the end of the big circuit and out on a smaller one now. And there, Paul, well, it's virtually going to be over here as the 3 come through to the cheers of the crowd. Dirksens, Murenhout and Vinokourov. And here comes the next group. Could it be the scene of a World Championship finish here with the grandstand set up like that? There's the chase group containing Vandenbroek, and there's another group getting on terms at the back as well.
Well, this is the development of a race like the Amstel Gold race, but this chasing group now behind the Armstrong group really do need to pick themselves up quite quickly, because we go out now on a very hilly circuit, and that is when it will be difficult to close down, because on the hilly circuit it's so hard to in fact organize the chase. A right-hand turn here off the main road, and then they will be taking the climb of St. Petersburg for the first time.
That's right, it flicks left just here now as the field are regrouping. Still some cars in between, but let's have a look on the climb then. The best way to see it from the helicopter through these narrow lanes with the beautiful houses and chateaux here tucked away behind the trees. You can hear the bells still ringing because the sound mics are still at the start finishing line. And in fact, Andrea Taffy's group has gone through 4 minutes behind the leaders, so he's a long way down. He's not going to get back now.
Big attack coming from Rabobank. That looked like Maarten den Bakker who was trying to get clear there. It was, in fact, den Bakker. He's opened it up. Now the big attacks are coming from Rabobank. This is the start of the climb. It is not a very long climb, but the important thing about this climb is once you get to the top, it's completely open and there is nearly always a side wind. So den Bakker now trying to split that group.
Well, this is climb 23 of 27. It only takes them up, Paul, to 120 metres. Here's the attack being launched here. This is to be expected. The Rabobank riders are going to try and win this race because they're going to attack. We've got 4 or 5 riders still in contention here.
Just on the point when those 3 leaders had been caught, that's when the counter-attack came. That's why Rabobank is such a good team. They're always tactically ready to take over a new stance in the race, which is why den Bakker, as soon as his teammate Koos Moerenhout had been caught, leapt out of the pack, because what he wants to do now is try and split this group of 14, reduce it to 6 or 7 riders, and then they can work well, and this is then a possibility of going through towards the finish. It looks like the reaction behind is coming, and Lance Armstrong is one of the riders going across.
Well, this is a great sign of Armstrong. No, this is a Lamprey rider, Paul, and so it's Zbigniew Spruk, I think.
Yes, Armstrong is just behind in 3rd or 4th position, so I think once we get to the summit here, that's Armstrong there. So he's seen the danger, and he realises this course. He's ridden this event so many times before, and he knows how hard it is once you come over the top of this climb of St. Petersburg.
And Armstrong has picked up Leon van Bon. This is an interesting little breakaway now. This is the reshaping. Frank van den Broek's getting across as well. And now this is becoming a very interesting sharp end of the race indeed. As Van den Broek gets on terms, he wants to see who's going to join him.
But a big move by Rabobank. You see the attack was placed by Maarten den Bakker, but now we have a 5-man lead group, 2 riders from Rabobank in there, so they're obviously playing this to perfection. They're trying to keep the race in their hands with the authority of having power in numbers.
Well, you know, den Bakker has been the national champion, yes, but he's never, ever had better form than he's got right now. And he knows it too as he's moved up in towards that lead group. And there's still a few more here at the back, although I don't think we can expect too much out of Koos Moerenhout anymore. Oh, in fact, here's the Taffy group now. They're still battling on. They're coming through. Long, long way behind. Taffy at the front of the bunch. And the way they're riding, the Amstel Gold for them is done, although... well, I guess they're going to go out and do the circuit, but you never know. Once out of sight of the cameras, they might turn off the course. Well,
the important thing about a World Cup race is you need 3 riders to finish to count for the World Cup team classification, and many teams have only got 1 or 2 riders up the road, so they will, in fact, ride to finish. Previously, in a situation like that, the riders may well have turned off and gone straight to the showers. But with the importance of the World Cup nowadays, a lot of teams try and encourage the riders to keep going to the finish to get them points to stay up there in the team rankings. Because it's the team ranking in a race like the World Cup which, in fact, designs where you're going to be in the team convoy. So that is an important thing going through to races like the Amstel Gold race where the roads are narrow. You want your team car to be right up there in 2nd or 3rd position.
And all finishers, provided they're within a certain percentage of the race winner, will receive World Cup points as well. There's Lance deciding it's time to get down to business by the look of it. Off come the arm warmers. It looks like we've got a general regrouping here now. That was the 5 riders we saw develop at the front, but looking at these pictures, we're all back together again. And again, another attack trying to go off the front. Rabobank are really trying to stir this race up now.
Maarten den Bakker putting the hammer down immediately. He looked over his shoulder. He could see the regrouping coming from behind and knew, again, he had to launch his attack, keep toughening this race up. Rabobank are very omnipresent in this group. There are 5 Rabobank riders in this group. Only 4 in the orange and white jerseys, but 1 in the red, white and blue jersey of the national champion. That is Michael Bogard. Again, Rabobank on the front. Fanini's gone across this time. And again, it's Maarten den Bakker obviously sacrificing himself, trying to split this race to pieces.
Well, this is a very tactical race just now. Look at the riders looking at each other here. Missalier is going to have to move forward himself, I think. He's taking with him a Rabobank policeman as well. And the man we haven't seen much from is Michele Bartoli. He's still here, but he's not taking part in these moves. He just keeps on gambling that they're not going to work, and they come back into this group of 14 or 15 riders. The same applies to Jalabert at the back, and it looks now as though Van den Broek is taking a little bit of a rest too.
Another rider in this group who's totally isolated with no teammates to help him, in fact, is Lance Armstrong as well. Armstrong completely on his own, no other riders from US Postal Service in this group, so if he has a problem, it's going to be difficult for him. And also, he's up against 5 riders from Rabobank. He may well find an ally in Laurent Jalabert, but I'm not sure that Jalabert is so good today because although he's in the group and he managed to make the selection, he's never really come off the back of this group of 14.
So there's the foursome now, the new one that's just formed, but I think before I tell you their names, they're all going to be back together again.
The four leaders, in fact, haven't been pulled back in. They're still holding on there. A very good move again by Martin Den Bakker, joined this time by Leon van Bon. Fanini's got up there and Missaglia. But it is, in fact, starting to close down from behind. This, Phil, is developing into a very tactical race. And I have to say the advantage at the moment certainly going to Rabobank, because although there are three riders in this group from the Mapei team, they don't really seem to be the dominant factor.
Well, this is Marcus Zerberg at the back, just 39 kilometres left to go at Canna. And the riders again are coming back, but the Rabobank are doing all of the attacking. They haven't made a mistake yet, but they are making the moves. They've got to watch out they don't miss one that somebody else might make.
Well, as long as they've got strength in numbers, they are able to keep launching attacks. And the clever thing they're doing is, although they've got one man going out there and attacking, they've always got a rider covering the counterattack, so they're ending up at every instance with two men in the front splits off these groups.
Well, that's very, very intelligent riding, and the Dutch are extremely good at tactical racing. This will suit them down to the ground. Gone from the group now, though, is Vinokurov. He's been dropped, and I think so too is Ludo Dierksen. I haven't seen him either, but the Murenhout, the Rabobank rider, is still in this group.
The Dutch riders super motivated today. This is their World Championships, as the Tour of Flanders is for the Flemish riders in Belgium. When the Dutch come here to the Amstel Gold, they really feel they've got to put on the show. And let's not forget, half of the country is out there watching at the side of the road, and the other half is probably at home watching on TV.
Musenberg now, and this is a famed climb, and we're starting the attacks again. Looks like David Rebellin here launching an attack, looks over his shoulder, a little bit of an acceleration, and again it's the Rabobanks. They're chasing absolutely everything now.
Zerberg going across there, followed by Michael Bogard. An excellent move by Bogard. Interesting to note, Bogard did an awful lot of work early on. He got caught in no man's land between the three leaders and the split behind, but he's still got a lot of energy left in those legs. No reaction in the group.
Well, it's a new thought now. What are they going to do? And there is a move coming off the front now. Well, that'll be Spruck at the front. Armstrong is not far away from Spruck's wheel, so he may get on it. The whole group is accelerating now. So we've got three riders up front, and somebody's just gone out the back there. I think it might have been Bettini who didn't catch the wheel.
And one guy going out the back pretty rapidly as well, I think, was Koos Murenhout, but we can't tell that against him because he's had a very hard race so far. I have to say, Zevgeny Spruck has been an excellent rider, Phil, throughout all of these classics, and on all the terrains as well, whether it be a Paris-Roubaix, a Tour of Flanders. He's always been there, always in, looking for the action.
Well, this is the 24th climb of 27 now. The Belgian flag is flying there because we're very close now to the Belgian frontier. There'll be no stopping, by the way. Everybody goes in. It's all part of the economic community these days. And so the European... They might ask Lance Armstrong for his passport.
I think the Americans have to get their passport stamped when they come into Belgium, so Lance has probably got it in his back left-hand pocket there.
Oh, there's some fine old cars down there too, I think have probably been driven across the frontier from Belgium. Now, all sitting up, all looking at one another. And one or two of the guys at the back, I think, pretty happy about that as they recover. But Bogard is going to have another little dig. Armstrong right with him this time. Rebellin is back in the group now. There's a lot of cat and mouse tactics here. These guys are looking almost to be equaling strength at the moment. But look at this now. Armstrong, he really is firing today. He's looking good.
Clever move by Armstrong too, because he looked over, he saw that Michael Bogard was on his wheel. He thought, this is the man I want to go away with. It's still an awful long way to go to the finish. I need an ally. If I can get away with the Rabobank rider, nobody's going to chase.
Well, that's a clever thought, and indeed at the moment we've got the two of them away now. There is a reaction from the field. They're still very much under pressure. Good stretch of road, this nice and good surface, good for attacking, although they can see him on the long straight road past the trees. And here comes a counter-attack. That's Missaglia who's going, and he's got Zerberg on his wheel now. Your plan again, Paul, when anybody goes, there's a Rabobank shadows.
And the only way you can do that is by having strength in numbers, which is why the Rabobank are riding such a good race so far. They've got a lot of guys in the group, so when somebody goes, one man follows. When the counter-attack goes, another rider follows, and that keeps you in the position of force all the time. Now Zerberg has looked over his shoulder. He's seen they've got the gap. He wants to close it down to make a four-man lead group, and again, two Rabobank riders.
Absolutely, he spotted that. He wasn't going to go and work with Missaglia because he was taking the man up to Bogart, but then he quite rightly saw the gap, and two at the front's better than one. And so it will put an American, an Italian and a Dutchman and a Swissman, but 2 of those on the same team as they now continue. And Zeberg anxious now to reach his team leader, and he's going to give this a lot of effort. He wants a little bit more from Massalia. A bit unfair because of Massalia who got him away in the first place.
But the important thing is he doesn't want to falsify the chase of the group behind. He doesn't want to end up being a carrot in front of the group of what is now down to 12 riders. He wants to get across quickly, but he doesn't want to do too much work to get across there. Armstrong looking over his shoulder. He will want some help to come from Michael Bogart. These 2 riders now are in the position of strength. They've gone out. Armstrong knows that they won't chase too hard behind, and he really won't want this man, Marcus Zeberg, to get up there because Zeberg has got a very good sprint finish.
Only 1 Dutchman in the breakaway. And you bet the Dutch will have noted that as well. But 2 riders, as far as they are concerned, from the Rabobank team, which receives enormous support here in Holland for what he puts into the sport of cycling. Very popular team indeed, and they've got 2 men in this group.
In fact, a lot of work coming from Zeberg. You'll see what will happen now is, in fact, Michael Bogart will have looked over his shoulder. He will have recognized the orange jersey, and he will sit on Armstrong for 200 or 300 meters, allowing his teammate behind to make the final junction. And that's about to happen almost at this instance. We now have 4 riders at the front of the race. 2 of them from Rabobank, 1 Lance Armstrong and the other Gabriel Misaglia. And that chasing group now around about 20 seconds.
And not looking like too many willing to chase here at the minute. And here comes the junction. Well, around about, I would think, 32, 33 kilometres maybe from the finishing line. And it's only about 20 miles. So this could be the move. We've seen plenty that have looked like it before, though, and they've got caught up again. But now we've got 2 Rabobanks. I would suggest with Bogart the one they really wanted in a move, because the champion's here. There's the lineup. Missalia is in good form. And Zeberg, if it came down to a sprint, Paul, Zeberg would be a tough man to beat.
It would be almost impossible to beat because he is a very good bunch sprinter. And in fact, the recent attacks have reduced the chase group now down to 9 riders. And again, the red, white and blue of Jalabert very happy just to sit on the back. It is really a very difficult situation now. The advantage going to Armstrong, because being away with 2 Rabobanks, there's nobody really strong enough in that group behind to organise the chase. Lance indicating to Misaglia, come on, you might have got across to us, but now we have to work because there's still 45 minutes of racing left before the finish.
He's telling him he could do with a little bit of recovery time, and he shakes his head, and Armstrong quickly takes it up. At the moment, they've got no room for argument in this breakaway. The strong men must work and forget the weak men till they establish the gap, which is only just over 30 seconds.
Now, there must be a reaction coming from behind, because once again, the yellow car, the neutral service car, has been pushed out of the gap, so that it's still not the 30-second mark that is needed. Here's the race director, Leo van Vliet, himself a former great champion cyclist, winner of a Ghent-Wevelgem and a couple of stages at the Tour de France. But the race is far from over.
I believe, in a race in Britain, didn't he?
Well, he beat me in a small amateur race. In fact, he also beat me in the 4 days of Dunkirk in 19...
Thank you. Well, it looks as though Bettini here has had enough. He's falling back because this is the 3rd group on the road with all the Lotto men. So Schmill is in this group too. And Peter van Petegem is here. Udo Bolt, I can see. So this is the 3rd group. Bettini's come back from the leaders.
Well, it just goes to show there's a big change happening out on the road. The interesting thing about this event is it can all come together in this final circuit. Alberto Elli from Team Telecom in there as well. But you can see the Lotto riders, they haven't really got the big power to organise the chase. They're not even being able to stay on the wheel at the moment. Nobody's got the strength to take the race by the horns and really get it organised.
Curt Verheyen is the rider dangling off the front, but nobody coming out to play. I don't see this group coming back now, quite frankly. There's Franco Ballerini, and there's Rolf Sorensen too. So there's some great names being caught at the back here now, and the chances of them making it up, I think, is not too good. Longroux, number 46 for Casino, going through.
It's a very big group there. It was interesting to note that Zabel's in this group as well. Zabel, regarded really as a bunch sprinter, has ridden well in the classics as well. He's obviously the kind of rider who's looking to put in an overall performance there. This, in fact, is Johan Museo looking back for the team car there. Museo didn't ride last week in the Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Oh, look at this. We've got Bartoli now trying to liven up the group.
Kelly Bartley knows the danger. Joe Blanchard trying to get a sandwich, but not really got the time to eat it.
Yes, get your food when you can, because Bartley now has realised he's going to have to give something to this chase. He's been very, very quiet in this breakaway, and he really hasn't been firing at all. But now they're all under the guard of the Rabobank riders left in the break. Things are swinging the way of that team, but of course they probably didn't count on having Messalier or Lance Armstrong, and certainly not Lance Armstrong, because he was very much an unknown quantity today.
Very much unknown. He's just ridden the Circuit of the South, where he won a time trial stage. Armstrong been fighting back after two really bad accidents. One actually out on the road while training, the other one during the Semana Catalana, where he came down to the ground and had a very difficult time, and because of that crash he decided not to take part in the Flèche Wallonne or the Liège-Bastogne-Liège race.
37 seconds the gap now. These four riders, Messalier is still not putting a lot of work in at all, and I think he's hoping that Zbigniew comes up, because he's the sprinter and he's just going to sit there and marshal this breakaway. But when you have two Rabobank riders in it, his argument is, why should I help them?
Strange tactics out on the road. Nobody now wanting to work at all with Michele Bartoli. He's having to sit on the front. He's got two limpet mines right on his back wheel, and they in fact are the Rabobank riders, but help this time coming from Frank van den Broeke. But you can see always in second and third position there are two Rabobank riders just sitting there, and still they've got three Rabobank riders in this group, while the advantage for the leaders is 37 seconds.
Well, there'll be Den Bakker, Moerenhout and Van Bon are the three riders left behind. Two of those riders would have the strength to win this race should this attack fail.
That's absolutely correct. I have to say, Moerenhout has ridden a fantastic race, because he was in that early group of three leaders, and when the other two guys got shot off, he was in difficulty a few kilometers ago, but he managed to recover and get himself back onto the line of this chasing group. Van den Broeke looking very good here, but again, nobody wants to organise the chase.
Now looks like Bartley's gone accelerating through, again shadowed, you see. One-on-one, but they're not. They need a consolidated effort here. Fagnini is trying to help out as well, and Rebellin is trying to help out, but whenever they look over the shoulder, there's a man willing or unwilling to come through, and the line stops going through, and it's all in chaos again. Lance Armstrong may have made the great move here.
Well, his tactic was absolutely perfect. He saw that he had a slight gap with a Rabobank rider, and the Rabobank rider was the correct one. It was, in fact, the champion of Holland, Michael Bogaert. He put his head down, and then the race became tactical. Now, in the past, Lance Armstrong has ridden this race and been frustrated by the tactics of the big teams like TVM or Rabobank, because they are always in form, always in excellent numbers in a race like this. But today, he's turned that tactic around and used it to his own advantage.
Well, these long roads, a little bit exposed just now, not too many trees, so they're catching what wind there is, but there isn't a lot of wind blowing today, which is unusual for Holland. Van den Broeke has gone to the back, and again, you see somebody goes through, finds a Rabobank rider in second place, and the line just closes up and stops working. Fagnini is driving it now.
Rabobank certainly got the big advantage here. Now, what the other riders in the group should do, who are individuals, they should come up to the front, forget about the Rabobank riders, and try and organise the chase. 5 or 6 have got an easy chance of getting across to that leading group, but Rabobank are playing it so cleverly. They're always slipping into the line there and causing a break in the chain.
Rebellin now having a word with his team car. Probably asking, what do I do? Nobody's willing to chase here. The gap is still only 35 seconds to those four, so the pace is holding them, but it's not catching them.
All they can hope for now, I reckon, is to keep the gap hovering around the 30-second mark, and when we get to the next climb, if somebody's feeling strong in this group, then you have to launch out and try and bridge the gap on the single climb, and that way you get rid of all the hangers-on, and that way you can eliminate 1 or 2 of the riders from Rabobank.
Well, looking up the road there, we can't see any sign of that breakaway, but they must not be much further than where we can see, because 37 seconds at the latest gap is not that far. Valmer, inside 20 miles to go to the finish, 30 kilometres.
Michele Bartoli, the cat they call him. He's got an incredible position on a bike. He's so low down, and he always seems to ride on the bottom of the handlebars. Even when he's climbing and getting out of the saddle, he's such a tough character, but he's aerodynamic, and I reckon in a couple of years' time we could see him riding well for the overall in a race like the Tour de France.
Well, people thought he was going to grow up as a big stage race winner, and instead he's grown up as a great classic rider. He takes them around the corner, little reforming of the group. Fagnini flying the colours for Seiko Cannondale with pride today. He's riding a great race.
If it comes down to a sprint at the end, he won't be far away from beating one or two riders in this group, because his normal job is leading out Mario Cipollini at stages of the Tour of Italy or the Tour de France. So given his free hand, he could take one or two of these guys straight down to the line. But you see now, this is what being a big champion is all about. Michele Bartoli knows he's got a chance of winning this race today, the Amstel Gold race, and he won't find any friends at all. And it's because of the fact that he's got the big reputation. They just sit back and say, well, you want to win, you can win. It's up to you to do the work.
Well, Van Bon's just going to sit there behind him and do nothing. It's not Van Bon, in fact, it's Moerenhout.
Amazing to see Moerenhout is still there, because I was pretty sure before on one of those earlier climbs there were a couple of big accelerations and he went backwards with some serious force. Obviously recovered and dragged himself back into the group to try and keep Rabobank with their strength in numbers.
Well, Jaja's the quiet man, Laurent Jalabert, isn't he? He's just sitting there and he doesn't seem to be contributing a great deal. But he's such a cunning bike rider. Maybe he's waiting for a climb and there's only a couple left to try and springboard away.
He's also waiting for the gamble of the fact that the whole thing will come back together at the end and he'll save a certain amount for the sprint. He has, in fact, obviously heeded your words there now, because he's gone to the front. But this isn't big power, Jalabert. This is Jalabert just trying to encourage the other riders to organise the chase behind, to get some kind of chain going, some kind of through and off, so they can make sure that those four leaders don't go too far ahead, not more than at least 30 seconds.
Oh, nice look at his giant bicycle there, which looks pretty smart in that black and yellow strip. And the sloping top tubes, small frames, but the high seat tube there giving him his normal riding position. And I know that Jaja particularly likes that bike.
Well, he won't be able to like it too much next year, because the international governing body have decided they're going to ban all machines that don't look like bicycles. And as far as they're concerned, if the tubing is sloping, then it's not a bicycle. But I think that's pretty ridiculous myself.
A lot of riders, I know the industry's up in arms about it, and there will be protests, I think, before those rules are put into effect next season. Anyway, we're back here now, group number 3 on the road, the Eric Zabel group. There he is, coming through in the white. The man driving the pace is Johan Museo. He wouldn't normally be in this group, he'd be in the one up front. He hasn't quite topped off his form from that accident he had last year in Paris-Roubaix, although he's been right up there on occasions this year.
Grady moving to the front. An excellent rider too if it comes down to the sprint at the end. Peter van Piegem, a former leader of the UCI World Cup. And this is also a pretty raggedy group here. There's some big names in the group, but they too don't seem to be able to get the organisation to try and chase back. But this is a strange circuit here. Once you've come into Maastricht and you go out and do that last 40-kilometre loop here in the Amstel Gold Race, it seems as if everybody's really on the rivet, and they all hover at 30 or 40 seconds. And what quite often happens is in the last 10 kilometres, when the tactics start to really play, the race comes right back together.
Well, the way they're riding in that third group, they haven't lost hope yet of catching these. Taffy's even further back, by the way, in another group. 42 seconds. They're nudging it out just at the moment. Jalabert on the front, setting the tempo. 42 seconds. It's been an awful lot of work to get such a small gap. 27 kilometres to go, too.
42 seconds, at least the four leaders are starting to pull out a certain amount of time over this chasing group now, which is 9 riders strong. And at the front, the Rabobank rider here, Marcus Seberg, realizing he's got a great chance of victory, and if he does lose, well, he's always got his own teammate Michael Bogard to take over, so they're pushing the pressure on an awful lot. And Armstrong now must be thinking, I've got to get rid of Seberg one way or another, because if it comes down to the sprint, I've got no chance against this man. He is a very good sprinter, and he does have somebody to lead him out if it comes down to that at the end as well, because Michael Bogard certainly will set himself right down the line to try and bring the victory to the Rabobank squad. This is such an important event for Rabobank because they are a Dutch-sponsored team. They're racing on home turf, and it's a real question of pride.
I thought I caught a glimpse then, Paul, of Armstrong speaking to his team car on his radio. I didn't notice whether he had his earpiece in or not.
He never really used to use it, but now that he's in a situation of importance, he may well be using it to talk back to the team manager in the car, which on today's occasion will be Johan Bruneel, coming up alongside Leo Van Vliet, a big supporter of Lance Armstrong. He really enjoys I'm not quite sure what that's all about. He wants to know just exactly what's happening behind. There's no information coming through to these riders because the gap is not yet big enough for the team managers to be there.
Well, they've had to fight for a few seconds, and at times he does have an earpiece in, so I think he was talking to his team, so he might well know the gap is just barely 40 seconds at the moment. Missaglia is still sat at the back, so he was originally saying he was tired. Now he's not interested in saying anything at all, because I think he really wants Sprook to come back into the play here.
Well, if it does come back, Sprook would have a better chance of winning the race than Missaglia, which is why now Missaglia is starting to take a back seat a bit more. He realises that he's at a disadvantage being with two riders from Rabobank, but he may well find an ally later on with Lance Armstrong, because it's certainly going to develop into a 2-against-2 situation.
Well, Bogart's having none of it. He's made him get up at least one place in the line so that Michael Bogart can have a little break. Michael Bogart, by the way, is a good friend of the Dutch speed skater and Olympic champion Romme, who's won the 10 and 5,000 metres in Nagano in the Winter Olympics. And they actually trained together, because Romme told me that he trained a lot with a cyclist called Bogart. Did I know him? I said, yeah, I had heard of him. He's not a bad rider. And so it's interesting how the two sports of speed skating and cycling have always run in parallel.
Especially here in Holland, where speed skating after cycling is one of the most popular sports. I remember walking down the street, actually in Maastricht, at one of the Amstel Gold races a few years ago with Eric Heiden. And it was amazing how many people's bottom jaws dropped as they saw the great multi-champion from the United States walking down the streets of Maastricht for a bike race.
Well, of course, Eric Heiden, speed skater, was an absolute god in Holland, because that really is their #1 winter sport. They have so much success over the distances, and Eric can't walk in Holland, frankly. And all of his reputation coming from speed skating, although, as we all know, he was a real good cyclist as well.
One of the biggest regrets I have for a rider is the fact that although Eric finished the Tour of Italy and was the winner of the Intergiro classification, he was so close to finishing the Tour de France, and in fact he crashed on the stage to the Alpe d'Huez and had a concussion. He actually wanted to continue riding, but the doctors recommended him against it, and that was a pity, because I reckon for a guy to be a 5 times Olympic gold medalist, to finish the Giro and the Tour de France, and now to become an orthopedic surgeon, well, got to be a pretty special guy.
Absolutely. And Zabel is the man trying to put things to right in this third group on the road. The champion of Germany. Well, judging by the speed they're driving it here, they haven't given up hope of contacting at least the next group. Now back to the leaders, and Rabobank are being coached by Theo de Roy.
And the car's come across now as well, so that's obviously the fact that the gap has gone up even more, because they normally won't let it in if it's only 30 seconds, and the Lamprey team car going forward there as well. So now a lot of tactics is going to come into play, and behind, because of the confusions of team cars going by, another rider has tried to leap off the front there, and in fact that was Fanini. But again, Phil, you see, marked by the red and orange of Rabobank, they're riding a perfect race. They're gambling everything now on that group of 4 staying clear, and they're gambling everything on Zerberg and Michael Bogert.
Well, the race in Belgium at the moment, one of the small climbs here, and they've still got this race very much under control, the Rabobanks. There are 4 riders, Paul, but it seems like there are about 10 of them the way they're riding this race. They're doing it so well. Well,
they're riding like 10 men, that's for certain. Great to see that performance by Koos Moerenhout on the back there. I actually got to know him a couple of years ago. He did a couple of months with Motorola as a stagiaire, along with a young man by the name of Max van Heeswijk. Van Heeswijk turned professional with the Motorola squad to great success and now rides for Mapei. And it took a year or so longer for Koos Moerenhout to get a professional contract, but he did turn professional with the Rabobank team, and I have to say he's developing into a pretty good bike rider.
Now, Missaglia will know what's going on now, because the team car's finally reached him. He's asking a lot of questions. He wants to know what's happened to Sprook. And as the gap is going out towards the 1-minute margin, he may have to think of contributing something to the breakaway, because he's not a bad finisher himself. And he's in with a chance of what I think would be, well, I'm sure would be his best classic result here.
Well, in fact, just up the road there, you can see the yellow car of the neutral service vehicle, and that is the group of Laurent Jalabert, and the group behind now has them in their sights. And old Rolf Sorensen here will be looking, rubbing his hands, saying, oh, I've had a nice, easy ride. I just can't wait for this thing to come all back together, because when it does, I'm going to certainly launch a magnificent attack. And he's just waiting and hoping the other guys will do all the work.
Well, that's Giannetti just in front of him there. Ballerini's coming up. Peter van Petergem's coming up in this group as well. they really have got themselves back into the race, it looks like. And there's Zabel. The only guys up front will be the 4 breakaway. Here comes the big Johan Museo as well. The only 4 will be the 4 leaders now, and they're less than a minute in front, although they may not know there's a breakaway ahead of this group they're catching.
Alberto Ellie on the back of the group. Well, that is remarkable. It always happens in Amstel Gold Race. You think the race has gone over the Kalberg. You think it's split to pieces. It's absolutely sorted out. You know who the win is going to be. And then it all starts to come back together again.
Well, there's Sprook over on the far side at the head. We've got Jalabert at the back. They're not on yet. Joe Plancart is there. We're back up with the 4 leaders here on Moto 1. Hardly a unit, are they? They're all over the place just now. Lance Armstrong is stuck in the middle, wondering why nobody came past him.
But there's more organisation in the leading group of 4 than there was with the 9 chasers. They're all over the road, and the fact that they keep attacking and being marked by a Rabobank rider will take the pace up and then slow it down. So 1 minute they'll be doing 30 miles an hour, the next they'll be doing 20, and that will allow the chasing group behind, with riders like Ballerini, Museo and Shamil in it, to catch them. And once they do, that confusion, I think, will help the 4 leaders, because the moment they get caught, then things will start to slow down even more, because once you have a big group, nobody really wants to chase.
Well, Bogart has got himself now with all 3 in front. I wonder if he realises what's going on at the back here just now. Moonhood's still tagged on. He's done a great ride today. He's been the perfect domestique in that long breakaway, and he's still helping the team now in this chase group. Bartley isn't the Mike McKelly Bartley we know. He's not really firing today. In fact, a long time back he gave a thumbs down to the cameras and smiled, and I think we should have read more into that than we did.
Not one of his great days, not the day like just about 10 days ago when he launched that incredible attack in Flèche Wallonne. He's a strange rider, though. When he's up, he's absolutely untouchable, but he's not in super form today. Evgeny Sprook there, 197, looking over his shoulder, wants to know what's going on behind. But the great thing about Bartley, Phil, is he is, just like Vandenbroek, a big fighter. He never gives up, he never lays down arms, and he will keep trying to chase this till the very end.
Fagnini looking at Moerenhoed. I wouldn't follow Moerenhoed's wheel right now, because you don't know when that guy's going to crack. And Frank Vandenbroek on the back, 48 seconds. It is incredible. They are prizing the clam open here and just nibbling away and getting the odd second or so. Then we get a flurry of attacks like this when I suspect they pull it back by 5 seconds.
Again, Michele Bartoli goes off the front, but he's always got the limpet mine from Rabobank there. This time it's a different name. This time it's Léon Van Bon. Hakekour, 22 kilometers to go. That's just over half an hour of racing. Sprook making it 3 chasers.
Well, that's an interesting group now, because this might be the trip up to the leaders that Sprook wants, and then Masali will be very happy. But I was just telling you how bad Michele Bartoli was. Now he looks to be going like a train again, because he's riding superbly. He has this wonderful streamlined style. And you may remember this year, if you're watching Milan San Remo, when Pantani absolutely smashed the field of pieces on the Cipressa, it was the streamlined figure of Michele Bartoli that destroyed Pantani's attempt to win that race.
Now this is the chasing group here with Ballerini, Museo, Schmil, and they now have that group with Laurent Jalabert right in their sights. We have a clean gap between the two, and the camera showing us just exactly the speed which is going on in the chase group. A lot of speed coming from Alberto Ellie, and I'm not quite sure why Ellie is riding so hard on the front of this group. There's the junction.
Perhaps.
They've picked up Jalabert, they've picked up Fanini,
yep.
And there's a few more riders up the road.
So they're picking off the breakaway. They'll have no idea how many are left up front, I caught, because there were so many, and they've brought them back one at a time. Bettini's been passed through that group as well. Here's the makeup of what's left of the breakaway now, and the line is getting a little bit short, as Frank Vandenbroek still in there too, and still looking pretty cool. His crash helmet not doing much good on the back of his head, but never mind.
Martin de Backer obviously thought that was pretty funny. David Rebellin moving to the front, doesn't want to get caught out behind a Rabobank rider, because they may well also start letting gaps go in this line. Vandenbroek has moved to the front. He's trying urgently now to make sure that this group doesn't get pulled back in, because he wants to make sure that riding all of these World Cup races now, he starts to at least consistently get points, because he's looking now a lot further down the line. There's the 20-kilometer banner. Frank Vandenbroek is looking at a possibility of a win in the World Cup.
Still on Belgian territory and just 12 miles from the finish, so that gives you some idea as to how close Holland and Belgium are at this particular point. We're not very far from the border now, actually, as we go back into Holland. Vandenbroek at home for the moment. He'll be soon away in Holland.
David Rebellin. All of these riders now realizing they've got rid of a couple of the Rabobank riders so they can actually try and organize. But looking back here from Moto 3 on the road, you can see that the group is really starting to pick up pace. A lot of energy and excitement coming into this group now. They can feel that having at one moment lost Amstel Gold race, it's now starting to come back into their clutches. The rider here coming from the Casino squad, Laurent Roux, an excellent rider, Roux. He rode last year for TVM, and during the winter months, one of the big transfers across to Casino. It's the first time he's actually ridden for a French team for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's amazing, really, the number of transfers this year. Riders are switching teams so fast here. It's been a tough year to keep up to date with them all, but they get better offers and they move on, or the teams don't want them, so they let them go. But right now, Laurent Roux has got himself back into a race situation where he could grab a place, if not the win. But first of all, they've got to work it out how they're going to pull these four back, who are still not out of sight or indeed out of mind.
Armstrong very urgently encouraging the other riders in the group to work. In fact, for the last couple of kilometres, Phil, every time we've seen Michael Bogard, he's been shaking his thighs, and that's a sign normally that the pain is starting to get a little bit high, that the cramp is starting to creep into the legs. And let's not forget that Michael Bogard has put a lot of effort into the success of this breakaway, and he was involved in a three-man chase group earlier on, about 70 kilometres to go to the finish. So he now must starting to be feeling the pain of this race. Rebellin going out of the front once again. Now the whole of the chasers have been caught back together, and Rebellin decided nice time for a counter-attack.
Well, we're still in Belgium, and they're trying to get this race sorted before we enter Dutch territory here. But, you know, it's so difficult to know which one of these breaks that you should chase down, because everyone looks as though it's got potential to stay away. Difficult race to work out. And now this group has become somewhat unmanageable. It won't be long before a group does get away. Frank Vandenbroek knows it, moving rapidly up the outside there. Jalibert's gone as well, the same names. We go back up to the four leaders now. And this is Bogard sitting at the back here. I think this looking very much like the Belgium climb of Hallen Bay now. If it is, it's 16%, and Bogard is going to give it a go. Armstrong spotted it. He was in the right place. You see the man playing the clown at the back there. He's trying to get rid of our television camera because this is a serious attack. And Armstrong's taken up the running immediately, Paul. And look at the face now on Bogard.
Well, Bogard didn't look too good for me the last couple of kilometres, but he was obviously trying to launch the attack there just to see if he could go it alone. There they are, just a little bit further up the climb around the corner. The four leaders will be. The big chasers on behind him, and now we've got two men going off the front, Bogard and Armstrong. Armstrong in incredible form, Phil, because he watched the attack going from Michael Bogard. He matched it, and as soon as he saw that he had the gap, and as soon as he'd put Seberg into difficulty, he's put the hammer down, because he realises that the danger man from that leading group of four was Marcus Seberg. Now they have around about 15 seconds.
Well, what can you say about Lance Armstrong? He has come out firing this year. His big comeback season last year after his problems with cancer, and his clutch of fourth places. Any cyclist in the world would have loved fourth in Spain and in the World Championships, the two world titles he rode there. And now he looks like he's going to put himself in with a real chance of becoming the first American winner of the Amstel Gold race. Laurent Roux attacking as well now, further down the climb. This race might come back together.
It's all very much in a handful of seconds. There was a big panic there because the Rabobank team car was scootling forward as well. That's obviously to try and keep an eye on tactics at the front, because they won't be too happy now with the split, with Marcus Seberg being caught in the second half of the leading group of four, because I think they were banking on a win for Seberg, and I reckon they'll be going forward very smartly to talk to Michael Bogard.
Well, stage winner in Paris-Nice, Laurent Roux. Started out his career with Castorama. He's been with TVM, now he's with Casino, and looking pretty sharp towards the end of the race today. As we come over the climb then of Hallen Bay, as we head now back towards Holland. Armstrong having a quick word with his team car.
He looks pretty mean there too. Look at the face on him. He's now getting into the system there. He's probably thinking back to the old time triathlon days, getting down and just hammering right the way down towards the finish. He's wanting to know just exactly how the race is developing behind, because he too knows more than any other rider in this race how easy it is for the race to come back together. And I remember 3 or 4 years ago when I was with the Motorola cycling team that Armstrong was in a very good position here at the Amstel Gold race, and he got involved in a crash going over a bridge, not too far from the finish. And I have to say, he wasn't very happy when he crossed the finish line.
Now, can these two chasers, well, these are further back. There's still two chasers in between, don't forget. Massalia is up there, and also the Rabobank rider, Zeberg. But now, again, we've got Laine on the counter-attack here, and he's joined by Martin Den Bakker. Everybody who goes away has hooks up with a shadow from Rabobank. If they continue with tactics like that, Paul, I don't see how they can lose the race. Unless, of course, we've seen Michael Bogard shaking his thighs, and he doesn't appear to be helping Lance as much as we'd like to see. Maybe he really is suffering.
I thought he was the weaker of the leading group of four because he did consistently keep shaking his thigh muscle, trying to loosen the muscles a certain amount to free them up from the lactic acid, which is obviously starting to get pretty topped up in those thighs of his. And it was a big surprise to see him attack there, because he must have realized by attacking the way he did that he would put Zeberg into difficulty. And I'm not sure that that was the ideal tactic, splitting the group of four when you've got the fastest sprinter.
Still in Belgium. The blue road signs, by the way, tell me that. And on the left we have the leaders. On the right we've got the two pursuers. But I think it's because our camera, we don't have a camera in between. There are, in fact, there's another tandem in between the two groups we're looking at here.
That's quite strange, because we've got 2, 2 and 2, and in every one of those groups a Rabobank rider. Martin Den Bakker is the man there in 6th position on the road at the moment with Laurent Roux. But in fact, fortunately for Armstrong, Michael Bogard has come up to the front and done a little turn with him. Not too long, though. Armstrong is certainly doing the major part of the work here. He
is obviously much stronger than Bogard, because he was almost having difficulty getting behind the Dutchman because he was just pedaling too quickly, and he's just gone straight back to the front. He's talking once more with his team car, so he'll know that there is 2 chasing and 2 chasing, and then the rest of the remnants of that regrouped from peloton. But Laurent Roux, see, getting no assistance at all from Den Bakker, and Martin will say, great if you can get me up there, because then I'll drop you when once you're tired.
This is the power of a big team on form. This is how you win races. The fact that every time an attack has gone up the road, there's been a rider from Rabobank there. They will have had a serious team meeting this morning, and I tell you what, when Jan Raas holds a team meeting and he bangs on the table,
you all run.
You make sure that you do what he tells you to do.
Oh, my goodness me, yes, they are all very frightened of Jan Raas. He wants results, and I'll tell you, he would love a result in this race. He's got to congratulate his team the way they've ridden this race. If they lose it now, it's purely because they've simply got tired. And if they lose it right now, then the winner is going to come from the United States and from Texas as well.
Armstrong, what an incredible performer, with stage victories in the Tour de France, 4th in the Tour of Spain last year. It's amazing to see how he's fought his way back from that testicular cancer. Many another athlete would have walked away and said, well, it's just going to be too hard to try and come back to some sort of level in the sport. But Armstrong is such a tough character that he's decided he wants to prove to all the other people in the world who suffer from similar ailments to himself that you can fight the disease and you can fight back. And he really is now proving that he is back at the top of the international cycling ladder.
Well, Michael Bogard has got to be surprised by his sudden show of strength today, because he hasn't been around for the classics, and Michael has. He's been right up there in the places too this year. And now, after his fine ride in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he came out as the favourite along with Jean-Luc Frankie van den Broek rather, for this event. And now it looks as though Lance is the strong man, because he keeps on flicking his arm to call through the Dutch champion, and the Dutch champion doesn't go.
And it is pretty strange, because these two riders are very good friends now. They're on the climb of Saint-Pierre, which is still in Belgium, the last major climb of the day. And once they go over the summit of this climb, they will be moving back into Holland and heading pretty smartish back to the streets of Maastricht. And Armstrong will start to be fuming a bit here, because Michael Bogard is a very good friend of his, and he won't be too happy with the fact that Bogard is being forced to sit on. But on the other hand, these are team tactics. Bogard knows that the fact is he's got a very strong sprinter behind. He's got Marcus Zeberg hovering at around about 20 or 30 seconds, which is why he's always looking around to see how the race is developing behind him.
Well, this is, I would like to say, a typical Amstel Gold race, because this is such a hard course. It blows these riders all over the area. Here are the chasers now, Zeberg and Massalia. And the interesting fact, Paul, Zeberg is working here. And, you know, I wonder if Theo de Roy in the team car has said, try and get up to join the leaders, because Bogard is tired.
That's obvious. Bogart has been leading this race for a long time. He was in that long chasing group of 3 riders, which were after the early breakaway of the day. He must certainly be the weakest of the 2 in the front. Armstrong is flying along here, which is why Zeberg on this occasion is working with Missaglia to try and bridge the gap to the 2 leaders. Because if it comes together, I have to put a lot of money on the man in second position there in the orange and white, Marcus Zeberg, to win the Amstel Gold Race today.
And what a result that would be for him, because he wasn't brought on the team to win a classic like this. He was brought to help the others look over the brow of the hill, because there they are. They are closing in rapidly. What's the gap? 10 or 12 seconds, no more than that. Missaglia is suffering like you wouldn't believe here, but he's still very much in the frame.
He's not a great winner of races, Missaglia. He's the kind of rider who was regarded as a domestique on the Mapei squad. But Laurent Roux, too, is making a fair impression on this Amstel Gold Race. He's got no help at all coming from Martin Den Bakker. Den Bakker himself realising the tactics on the road, the fact that they've got 2 men at the front, the fact that he's got a faster man up the road in front of him in the shape of Marcus Zeberg. He doesn't want to contribute anything at all to Laurent Roux. He knows Laurent Roux. He actually raced with him a couple of years on the TVM squad together before he switched across to Rabobank.
So they're now rivals, and looking at the face of Den Bakker too, Laurent Roux is firing because he's hurting the man even though he's only following. We've got 3 groups of 2 on the road at the moment. That's the middle group, and now we go back up to the front group with Moto 1, and we've got Michael Bogart sitting at the back.
And this is the descent where a couple of years ago Lance Armstrong found himself sitting on his backside in the side of the road with his machine cut to pieces, and not a happy man when he rode up to the finish line in Maastricht. He'll know halfway down this climb there's a very dodgy little left-hand corner, and if you don't watch it, you can lose it.
I would call it more than a left-hand corner, frankly. Here we go. It's a hairpin bend, and in fact Lance has taken it rather wide again. He came in far too tight there. He should have gone a bit more wider around. He'll have to do a little bit more before he becomes a motor racing driver. Anyway, these 2 have got the idea. Missaglia takes it wide, but there's Zeberg doesn't. He just goes through very, very close to coming together, and we could have 4 men back in a minute.
It's still only hovering at 10 seconds. Once they get down off this descent, then it's a flat road all the way into the finish line, and then there will be man against man. It'll be a chasing group of 2, 10 kilometers left to go to the finish. Very shortly they'll flick across the bridge onto the far side of the River Meuse, as they say in Belgium, Maas as they say in Holland.
I think we're in Maas now, aren't we? We're back in Holland.
But Armstrong getting no help at all here. Quick chat back to Johan Brunel in the team car.
And Rohan must have told him, Paul, these 2 are coming up. This is not going to be good news if they come up. There's the gap. It's still 10 seconds.
10 seconds is not very much at all. They're not able to lean across there and get across. It's so difficult. Marcus Zeberg must be sweating, hoping that he can make the junction, because then he'll know he's got a great chance of winning the race in the sprint. You can see the urgency in his pedaling style now, and Missaglia is obviously going to start to take advantage of this. In the front, though, all of the time, Michael Bogart is at least getting the chance to recover, because he's been sitting behind Armstrong wheel now for about 10 kilometres, and there's the chase group.
And it's still a very big group, but whoever wins this race can look back on having won a vintage edition of the Amstel Gold Race, because this has been a superb bike race today, and it is not over yet. Those 2 leaders are certainly not safe.
2 leaders, 2 chasers, and 2 more other riders trying to get across. Laurent Roux and Martin Den Bakker are not very far in front of this group, and the speed and the long line there shows that the hammer is down in this group now. Everybody's trying to pull the race back together in the very last 10 kilometres of racing, and that is so often the way this Amstel Gold Race develops. And that's probably why Laurent Jalabert earlier on was just sitting in the group, because he was gambling on it coming back together and having plenty of energy left for the sprint.
And everywhere you look is a Rabobank jersey, and there's an attack from Casino going off. No, it's Polti going off, probably rebelling again, going down the outside the road as they all chase him down, trying to reassess. They've got to get a group away from that unmanageable field there if they're going to chase down the 6 riders in front.
The only chance of success, I think, of bridging to those guys is getting a group of 5 or 6 off the front. You see what's happening now is fairly typical in a situation like this. You've got one guy will attack, he'll pick the speed up to 50, 55 kilometers an hour. Then when he gets caught, it all shuts down and they cruise along for a while. That gives the advantage to the men up the road.
Moto 2, so this is the chasing duo, 8 kilometres from the finish, and they're not on yet. They are down. Remember that it's only the strength of Armstrong that's keeping them off that lead group, because Bogart now seems to be pretty much a passenger.
Seberg looking pretty good, looking in good form, looking concentrated, knows the importance of getting across there to the leading group of two. And they can see them all the time. They can see those motorbikes in front. Those motorbikes are where the two leaders are. That is where Lance Armstrong is, and that is where, in fact, Michael Bogard is. And that's why the urgency is coming into the pedaling action of these two guys now. They know they've got to close it down before the final kilometre. They've got to get up there, and that is going to change the whole face of the race. But Lance Armstrong is not going to lay arms down that easily. He knows what he has to do, and he knows after the big effort he's put in now that he cannot allow Marcus Seberg to rejoin the leading group.
Well, I think he's going to have to, because that's the closest they've been now. And they're getting to the area where they will smell the leaders, and then it'll close up very, very dramatically.
Fanini now trying his arm at getting off the front of the big group behind there. He's got a rider from Mapei with him. It looks as if it might be Daniel Nardella who's leaping out of the front there. Big attacks coming all the time in the group, and this, I have to say, is the advantage for the breakaway up the road, because what's happening is the speed is not constant. Again, you see Bogard shaking his legs there, really suffering. He now knows that when he comes up here alongside the Meuse, he's going to have to take another turning to the right, and they have to face that climb for the final time of St. Petersburg.
Well, in fairness to Michael Bogard, he has been up front all race here. He's ridden a great race. He's now 6 seconds. There they are.
It's going to come back together, Phil.
It's got to close down now in the next few metres. And then there is a different problem now for Lance Armstrong. He has a sprinter up here in Seberg, and who knows what Massalia is capable of now, because he seems to have suffered ever since he joined the front four.
But Massalia is a very good rider on the climbs, and if they do get together at the bottom of the Côte de St. Petersburg, then it may well be Massalia could cause a surprise attack. Now, the four riders together at the front, and immediately Marcus Seberg takes up the pacemaking, and that is a complete change. It's a shame for Lance Armstrong, but now, once again, he's against two riders from Rabobank. Massalia taking them through the quarry area here. This is where the riders will come for the showers a little later on, and in about 1 kilometre they would take a left-hand turn off this road and head up St. Petersburg.
They're all concerned about the chasers, but I would have thought 4 of them should be enough to finish this off. It's not far from the finish now, about 6 kilometres to go. Here's how the catch was made. Seberg bringing up Gabriela Massalia, and 4 guys in front now. Armstrong checking out to see who they were. Well, he should know. He left them behind on the second to last climb in Belgium, but they're back now.
Seberg looking very frisky there. He's got quick response. Look at the speed in his legs there as he leaps across to respond to the attack by Massalia. A look across there from Bogard to Lance Armstrong, probably saying, sorry mate, you know, I know we're good friends, but this is bike riding. I got the order from the team manager and I had to do it. Very shortly they'll flick across the green verge there in the middle of the road.
Well, I hope it's on tarmac, Paul.
Well, I hope there's a road there. There is, in fact, a road there. I've stood there many times and watched these riders taking that left-hand turn and heading up St. Petersburg. Switching over to the right-hand side of the road, Armstrong now must feel frustrated. His big attack came. He'd planned it perfectly. He'd isolated the Rabobank riders. It was 1 against 1. And now the advantage tilting against him with 2 Rabobank riders to face up against.
Well, let's see what he does next, but you've got to hand the Rabobank full marks today for their tactics. They've had this race under control. There might be 6 very soon now, because the 2 chasers are at 32 seconds and they're closing in. These 4 have got to really consolidate a friendship for a few kilometres at least, otherwise these 2 are going to get up. And, well, Dembaka is now working.
Dembaka now has realised that the group of 4 are bound to stay away in the front. All he wants to do is make sure that he can help Laurent Roux just enough to stay away from the main field, who are starting to pick up speed behind. Oh, there's been a crash.
Well, that was on the left-hand turn to start the climb. Now, what on earth happened there? We'll have a chance when the recording is played back in, but let's have a look at this, because Seberg is down and Massalia is down, which we presume means that Armstrong and Bogard have gone clear, and there they are. Let's have a look. They must be up the road here somewhere. There they are. So the crash has caused the 2 guys who just got up have now gone out of contention again, and we are 4 or 5 kilometres from the finish. Now we can see what happened here. Armstrong in the lead. Bogard, Seberg, Massalia. We're going up to the crowd line for a sharp left-hand turn up the hill. The Rabobank bus on the left of the road. That, I think, might turn out to be ironic now. But there's a motorbike just here. Armstrong misses. And, in fact, Seberg and Massalia have had a terrible crash here. Well, that's a press motorbike, and I don't like to criticise colleagues in the business, but that was a really daft place to stop.
Well, that was absolutely ridiculous. I could understand if he'd stopped on the inside of the corner, but that was in the line of the riders. Now, this has completely changed the face of the race, because I was thinking now Zeberg was going to run out the winner. The two chasers now on the slopes of St. Petersburg. Up ahead, you can see the two. Let's have a look at that again, Phil. Armstrong was attentive. He saw the motorbike, flicked around it in second position. In fact, it was very close there, but Marcus Zeberg, he didn't have a chance to react. That bike was absolutely on the wrong line. It was right in the line of the riders.
Now, in fact, Masali is on his own chasing now. Here comes Zeberg back to this chase group because he had to change a bike. Apparently his gears were smashed in that prang. So he's now gone back. Well, things suddenly going wrong for Rabobank, and through no fault of their own. That is a real shame.
Well, that was unbelievable. I think that motorbike driver will get seriously sanctioned tonight, because that is ridiculous. But it's also a slight problem with the fact that a lot of those motorbike riders taking a photograph there's the problem with the gears. In fact, it hasn't been repaired.
Bike, no.
It's still jumping, so he's got his machine has a number on it, so he hasn't been able to get a bike change from the team car yet. Now, the balance may well turn into the favour of Armstrong, but he won't, over these last 4 or 5 kilometres, get any help at all from Michael Bogard. He'll be looking over his shoulder, just hoping that his teammate can recover from that crash and come back. He will not know what the situation is just now, because the team cars are nowhere to be seen.
And we come out of these lanes very shortly now as we head into the finish. Armstrong is left on the front, and he must feel a bit confused now as to quite what to do here. And Bogart, quite apparently, is not going to help now Lance Armstrong at all. It all seemed to be going the way of Rabobank. Now they're in trouble. Bogart is not firing at the moment. Here is Laurent Roux and Martin Dembacker, and I think gone behind now is Zeberg. But between these two and the two leaders, we still have the little Italian.
Masaglia was just going around the corner there, but that was a serious problem. Those gears of Marcus Zeberg's were jumping all over the place. Armstrong now knows that there's only one thing left to do. He has to drag this man down to the finish line. A quick chat to Johan Brunel in the team car. Give us an update. What's the situation? Are they together? Are they riding behind us? And now Armstrong is going to ride down. He knows this finishing circuit. He knows it's mostly downhill until he takes the final right-hand bend into the finishing straight in Maastricht. Masaglia caught in the middle. Such a great ride by this young man, winner of the Tour de Langkawi last year. And to go down after that incredible comeback is really a shame for the race.
We've now rejoined the leaders, and even Lance Armstrong now flexing those big thighs.
Armstrong now has got to ride on the front all the way to the finish line. He will not get any help at all from Michael Bogard here. Bogard will just be hoping that, in fact, his teammate can recover from behind and come up here. And that's the big advantage that Rabobank have had since the very start. Taking the corner here, they now have 5 kilometres to go to the finish line. It's all flat now, and it's a whole the way that Armstrong is going to have to ride on the front.
Well, Bogart is content to follow, and in fairness, Lance hasn't even looked over to say, come on, give me a hand anymore. I think he's given up now. Well, the caption said 5 kilometres to go, Paul, but that is the 1 kilometre banner. So we're running into the finishing line here now, and these two riders are going to fight out the last 1,000 metres, and Armstrong, I think, is going to have no choice but to lead it out.
Armstrong will have to keep going. He has no idea now. The fact is the team managers are a fair way behind. The neutral service car is in there, and he won't know who is coming back up to the group. He takes the corner now into the finishing straight. The big crowd are starting to cheer. Armstrong himself is very popular here in Holland, but they would certainly like to see the red, white and blue jersey go across the line in first place. Armstrong is trying to open up the sprint behind Masaglia, still caught in no man's land, about 10-15 seconds in arrears, and further down the road, Dembacker has joined up with Marcus Zeberg.
Well, he might hang on, but let's get back to the two leaders now. Armstrong committed here. He'll ride close to the barriers, so he forces Bogart to come on one side only. He's judging the finish to him, to Bogart. He's got to judge this to absolutely perfection if he's going to beat him. Now, Bogart, we know is tired, but he's in Holland. Look at him grit his teeth now as he goes for the back wheel of Armstrong. He's hanging on. Armstrong slips in, but Armstrong is looking good at the moment. Armstrong's got that big gear turning. There's still a lot of strength in those legs, but now Bogart is a do-or-die effort by the Dutch champion. He's dived across over to the crowd, and I'm not sure from this angle who is in the lead as they hit the line, but Bogart thinks he's running done it, and it must be desperately, desperately close. And further back, it's going to be equal for the third place here too, because in fact Massalia is being chased down now, and I think he is just about going to hang on. So Massalia gets the third place, and in fact over the line it comes Dembaka and then Laurent Roux. And further back down the line as well, this is Leon Van Bon pacing home the luckless Marcus Zerberg, who may well have won this race, you know, with his sprint finish. They're coming up towards the line together. Van Bon will get the next. The gears are still clanging around on Marcus Zerberg, and the sprint behind too, but this is for 6th and 7th place. And Zerberg looks over to see how the chase group is coming up. They're not close enough. He is absolutely frustrated because he may well have won this race. Pagnini bringing home the rest of the riders here and showing us what a good sprinter he is when he's in with a chance. Rabobank guys coming in all of the time now as they make it up towards the line. And here comes the group containing Andre Schmil and Michele Bartoli, who is also there. And as they want to come up to the line now, the main field, and Museo is making it as well. So he's finished well up today. He just got away from them on the run-in. This is what's left of the main field coming home today. Well, now let's have a look at that sprint from the helicopter here, Paul, because you see, it looked to me as though Armstrong had done enough here because he was still kicking well, but then the move up the inside by the champion of Holland, and he won it by the skin of his tyres.
It was the big lunge, both of them throwing their bikes right at the last minute there. Armstrong's arms outstretched, and you have to look very closely, but you can see the bike closest to the camera there, that of the winner, Michael Bogard, by around about 2 centimetres. This is the sprint again, Phil. Now, Armstrong sprinting exceptionally well. He chooses the middle of the road. It's a very straight sprint. You can see the face now on the left-hand side on Michael Bogard, and I'm sure you're right. The fact is, it is Holland. He is on home turf, and he's digging deeper than he's probably ever dug into those thighs before, and he throws it at the line at the last minute. A well-timed lunge, and that lunge has given him victory in the Amstel Gold race of 1999. And one man after the finish is going to be pretty angry, and that's Lance Armstrong, because Bogard sat on him for 20 kilometres.
Well, I think that Lance, because he was pushed to the front, had to start his sprint a little bit too soon there. There is Michael Bogard. All smiles. He lives here, by the way, and the team is based in this area as well. So this is very, very, very much a home victory, and this guy is going to be happy. But in fairness, he's not going to like the win the way it was, because Armstrong was the strong man at the end. Now the tears of joy come out. This has been a serious victory for Michael Bogard. He's won a stage of the Tour de France in the pouring rain at Chambry a couple of years ago, but now, well, I'll tell you what, this will be very, very special for him. The prize in the Amstel Gold race will be coming his way. The first Dutchman to win since 1991, Frans Maassen, who has since retired. And this is the crash which shaped the race and arguably changed the winner too. Because I wonder if the sprint of Zerberg would have finished it all off in Rabobank's favour. They hit the side of the motorbike, and then Massalia simply had nowhere to go. They could have been so badly hurt, but thank heavens they weren't. And the victory then to the man who is the current champion of Holland at this magnificent trophy. Rather pensive Lance Armstrong there, not looking too happy, wondering what went wrong, because when he hit the line, I bet he thought he'd won it. Lance is a real serious competitor, but what a ride. The first classic of the year for him, and to lose it by, well, in English terms, less than an inch. I think we're all happy that Massalia hung on for third place. But remember the face, this man's having his finest season ever. I hope you've enjoyed the coverage of the Amstel Gold race. This was pretty special for everybody concerned, and we'll see you again soon.